America's choice in home care.
Hello, everyone. I am Mary Ellen Wilson. Welcome to our Visiting Angels Coffee Chat, where we come to you every other week with topics of interest to all of our older adults. So Mary Ellen Wilson, Business Development Manager, and many of you already know that Visiting Angels, we have offices here in Gaithersburg, Silver Spring, Washington, D.C., and Edgewater, Maryland. And we allow older adults to age safely in place for as long as possible. So with COVID, it has not been great for someone like me who loves to get out into the public, meet with clients, meet with our referral partners. So we thought, well, what's the next best thing? Let's come to you all virtually. And so that is how our coffee chat started. Today, I am super excited to be talking to Pamela Silberman, who is going to be talking about sundowning and some other issues with Alzheimer's and dementia, which is such a hot topic for sure. So we're super excited about that. First, some housekeeping. When you hear telephones going off in my office, just ignore them, as I will. We will have a chance for Q&A as well as afterwards. So you can put your question right in the Q&A box or in the chat box, whichever is your preference. Also, hello to our friends in Facebook. We are live streaming. Facebook friends, should you have a question, just go ahead and put it in the comments and we will be sure to address your question as well. All right, without further ado, I would love to introduce Pamela Silberman. And Pamela, take it away.
Hi, so I am so glad to be here to everybody who's watching through either Facebook streaming or here on Zoom. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am the CEO and founder of Enriching Connections, which essentially is we're dementia specialists. So consider dementia education, behavior modification, being able to go into your home or memory care or assisted living setting and help the person who is living with dementia live their best life possible. So one of the things that we do as dementia educators is really assist a person in all aspects of dementia, whether it is a certain transition, maybe to a community, or bringing in a caregiver, or helping them just navigate the symptoms that they are living with, to helping them live as comfortably and thrive as much as possible. So Enriching Connections is our website, so in case you are interested in going on there and checking that out. But today we are going to be talking about sundowning, or also known as sundown syndrome. So this is a common term that you might hear for people who are living with dementia, and we'll describe exactly what sundown syndrome is. But before we get to that, I just wanted to let you know that life often presents challenges for all people. So it's not about exclusively living with dementia. It's about living through challenges, and being that we've been primarily in our own homes for the last 6 months, I'm sure, and experiencing the pandemic and all the fears and anxieties that go along with that, I'm sure you all can understand what it is like to live with a challenge. So some of the challenges that we might see as human beings include, just feeling a sense of disagreement, a sense of comfort, feeling discomfort, feeling powerless, maybe a physical pain or an emotional pain, feeling misunderstood, not getting a message across how you would like to get it across, experiencing grief and loss. These are challenges that every human being experiences, and it is normal. So living a challenge or living in a sense of feeling challenged is normal. And it is really, really important that we normalize that experience of having emotions and not feeling heard and not feeling understood. So the challenges of living with neurocognitive impairment, is definitely one thing, but every single human being, has a variety of different challenges. We all have feelings, we all have goals, we all have needs, we all have expectations. We all desire to feel well. We all desire to feel understood, and we want a life that is meaningful. Again, normalizing the experience of being human. So when it comes to dementia, I consider the disorder of dementia metaphorically a burning of a bridge. So think about it this way. We are all communicating human beings. We all are social human beings. We all have ways of connecting to the outside world through our abilities, our personality, our family, our personal history, our interests, our daily pleasures. And unfortunately, when a person receives a diagnosis of a brain change, that cognitive impairment, the symptoms of that cognitive impairment often lead to burning those bridges to the outside world. So where a person loses their ability to communicate, they lose their ability to recognize family, they lose that ability to tap into their own personal history, their own daily pleasures, their own interests. And that is the symptoms of the illness that is causing that bridge to burn. So as care partners, we have to be bridge builders. So for those of you who are experiencing being a carer or a care partner right now, consider that is your main job, is to build the bridges that are being burned down through the experience of dementia. And in order to be a bridge builder, you have to be willing to connect with understanding and with empathy for everything that is going on in the world of that person living with dementia.
And I really do love that analogy of burning bridges and be a bridge builder, because it is so true that that's just a perfect way for us to picture what this what dementia and Alzheimer's is all about. And I love the fact that you say, you know what, we have to enter their world now. Right? They're no longer in
Yes.
ours, so to speak. So now we have to enter theirs, and here are the skills to take you into theirs. So this is really great. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. And yes, absolutely. Emphasizing the fact that their world is dissipating, stage by stage, moment by moment. And so it's the carer, the care partner that very much has to no longer expect that they're going to be able to come into our world, but we have to enter theirs. And one phrase that I use frequently is being a message detective. And that phrase was coined by Teepa Snow, for those of you who are familiar with her work. And so she talks about being a message detective is going into their world and literally investigating what they want and what they need in any given moment. And so we'll talk a little bit about that later. But let's talk about what sundown syndrome is. So for those of you who are familiar with the term sundowning, that is a term that tends to label people. And so I don't use the term of sundowning, I use the term sundown syndrome, which is, it is a type of disorder. So it's, again, important for us to recognize that the disease is filled with symptoms, okay? It's not the person who is doing this. It is not the personality who is purposely experiencing these symptoms. It is the disease. So if anything that we should be angry at, it's the disease.
Right. And thank you for that. I never really thought about that. I use the term sundowning all the time. So I will strike that from my dementia vocabulary.
Well, thank you. So what are the symptoms or the signs of sundown syndrome? So this slide kind of just outlines it. Primarily what you'll see is between the hours of 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., increased agitation, yelling, screaming, maybe crying. Anxiety is probably the main go-to. So if you're not seeing the more extreme symptoms, such as hallucinations, delusions, or paranoia, you'll probably primarily see anxiety. And that's really what most people are experiencing, is this increase of anxiety. And that increase of anxiety will also kind of trigger the agitation, the pacing, maybe even the disorientation. The anxiety will cause a person to want to demand answers to questions or have those repetitive verbalizations over and over again. So if we're going to narrow it down, it really has to mostly do with anxiety.
Interesting. I always think it's interesting too how it occurs, between 3 and 6 on average. But what I find so interesting about that is when we have babies, I used to call that the bewitching hours, because that's when my babies would always get so fussy. And it's almost like cycling back to the beginning.
Yeah, so there is a term that's called retrogenesis, and what that term talks about is that returning to how a person was more in their infancy. I want to emphasize, though, that we don't treat people like infants and we don't treat people like children, but the brain is potentially cycling back to how the brain perceived things or was able to attach to the outside world in the same ways that an infant brain might. But understanding that people are still adults or will always be adults and that we treat them as adults. So some examples about sundown syndrome that you might see: a shadowing, where a person will literally attach to their carer and follow them around. Again, there's an emphasis on the anxiety, is they don't want to be left alone. Like, where are you going? Come back. Are you going to the bathroom? I need to be in there with you. Don't leave me. And that's, again, that anxiety that they're expressing, is they're afraid of being alone. They might ask those questions over and over, and they might interrupt conversations that you're having. They might try to, if you're taking a phone call, they might constantly talk at you while you're on the phone. Temporarily loss of communicate, maybe altogether or coherently. Difficulty following directions. So maybe making accusations. I know you're having an affair. You're talking to your boyfriend on the phone, or you're stealing all my money, or my son is stealing all my money. So you'll see that, again, anxiety, pacing, fidgeting, inability to stay in one place, potentially outlandish ideas that might even come from a dream that they had the night before, or a television show that they watched, where now they believe that that television show that they watched is real.
Wow. Wow.
So when it comes to causes, there really is a lot of hypothesis out there and theories. Nothing is really concrete when it comes to truly understanding what causes this. So some of the theories, it's a natural response to a lack of stimulation, where the person is bored, they're tired, and then they just feel stressed, just an overwhelming amount of stress that just kind of explodes at the end of the day. So if you think about it this way, where the person has been able to maintain, from the time that they woke up in the morning through the afternoon, and living with dementia is a struggle, where the person knows things in the world are not how they are perceiving it. And so they're working extra hard in order to stay connected to that world. And so they just kind of get exhausted. They're mentally, emotionally, and sometimes even physically exhausted. And there's just so long that you can be exhausted and not lose it, for lack of a better term. Yep. So that's kind of theory one. Theory two is that there's maybe actual chemical changes that are happening in the brain, like hormones, neurotransmitters. This is a brain disorder, and neurotransmitters fluctuate at all times of the day. We have certain neurotransmitters in our brain that wake us up, certain ones that we sleep with, certain ones that help us maintain during the afternoon. And so potentially changes in these neurotransmitters biologically are causing these responses. And then, of course, theory three is the catch-all combination of 1 and 2. So we're not really sure exactly what it is. One thing we have noticed overall is that it has a lot to do with not being able to get enough sleep. If a person is not having quality sleep at night, similar to what Mary Ellen was saying with an infant, if you're not getting enough sleep at night, it is not going to be good for you during the daytime. So again, if you're also being overstimulated, and a person living with dementia, the brain cannot handle a stimulation in the outside world, like noise, people talking at them, being able to socialize or figure out what is happening in their environment, it exhausts their brain because the brain has to work extra hard than it was able to maintain before. And so again, you have this exhaustion that leads to anxiety and stress. So I have several slides all about tips on how to ease a person who's living with Sundown syndrome. Please, after this, my contact will be, available through Visiting Angels, through, this the website. So if you want to reach out to me at any time and feel that, you want a more detailed intervention, or a plan, please feel free to reach out to me. But here are just some universal tips to ease a person who is living with the symptoms of Sundown syndrome. Keep a daily routine. Okay, so keep it structured, but not over structured. It's not about, okay, we have to do A, B, C, D, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 p.m. Not over structured, not like it has to be concrete, but at least something that the person can trust, something that the person can relate to and understand is, oh, okay, breakfast generally happens to be during, the time right after I naturally wake up in the morning. I know when breakfast is, or, I know when lunch is, or I know that there's always going to be something fun for me to do in the afternoon, or that there's going to be a person that's going to come over to my home and spend some time with me and help me bathe and dress and maybe cook a meal for myself, or there's going to be someone there that can assist me. So understanding, what the day is going to be like, so it becomes a little bit more predictable. That is what having a daily routine is about. And then, of course, monitoring their intake in the sense of, are they having an excess of caffeinated beverages towards, the afternoon, which would overstimulate them in the evening? Are they eating big meals at night, which might affect their ability to sleep? So it's better to have a bigger lunch and a smaller dinner, right before, and maybe move your dinner time up an hour, just so that the person has time to digest, so all of these are just basic tips that could potentially lead to the person being more comfortable at night. So you might also want to avoid too many naps, or exercise right before bedtime, because then the person again is going to be, they're going to be stimulated. They're going to be over and awake, and they're not going to be able to fall asleep. And if again, not able to fall asleep, they're not going to get quality sleep. Not getting quality sleep will definitely lead to, symptoms of Sundown syndrome, perhaps the next day. If exit seeking, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it's a vicious cycle.
Absolutely.
Builds upon each other. Yeah.
And so also if exit seeking is occurring, knowing what some of those signals are that lead them to wanting to go out the door or go somewhere. If people are saying the atypical phrases, I need to go home, I want to go home, find out where home is, because you could actually be in your house and the person is saying, I would like to go home, because they're not recognizing the home that they currently in. And that's why we have to get into their world, because in their mind, in their timeline, they could be in the home that they were in as a child. They could be in the home that they were in most of their adult life. And then perhaps you then move to retirement community, but they're picturing the home that you raised, your 4 children in, and not the home that you're currently living in. So find out their timeline.
Ask you though, what do you do about that if they don't, if they do feel like they need to go home, but they're not in their home? How do you, you can't convince them that they are,
Right.
You have to be in their world. So do you go take a walk? And end up
So doing something that distracts them is sometimes helpful, but the go-to that I recommend the most is tapping into where they see themselves and why they feel like they don't belong in this current location, because needing to go home is saying that they know that they don't belong, or they're not familiar with where they currently are. They're not feeling secure. They're not feeling safe. They're not feeling familiar. So finding out what can help them feel more familiar so that they don't have to go to a place or think that they have to go to a place, that brings them more familiarity. So that's having that ability to have that conversation with them, particularly in these earlier stages or the early moderate stages, where the person can have a conversation and say, oh, I need to go to Wisconsin. And you happen to know Wisconsin is where they grew up, you know, and not where you are now. So then you can talk about, well, tell me about Wisconsin. You know, what do you expect to find there? And what do you need to do when you go there? Oh, I need to, you know, I definitely need to go to the bathroom, right? You know, once I get to Wisconsin, and be like, and that's like your trigger saying, oh, maybe you need to go to the bathroom right now. You know, so finding out, you know, how you can help them along that route.
Right. Yeah, again, being the message detective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, seeking medical advice, depending on exactly how intense the Sundown syndrome is. So when we're talking about somebody that is experiencing hallucinations, delusions, severe paranoia, those are also what could be the signs of delirium or an infection, such as like a UTI, which can cause the symptoms of delirium. A person can die from delirium. So when you're seeing sudden changes in a person to an extreme where they're hallucinating, having, you know, major suspicion or major changes in their speech, you know, that could be a minor stroke, that could be delirium. That is something that is requiring a medical intervention. So it's important to note changes that are happening kind of slowly over a long period of time, that's more like dementia. Changes that are happening within a week or a few days of each other, and they're drastic changes, that's something that you really need to medical advice about. And then I guess, again, we talked about sleep. You know, looking at the sleeping arrangements, is this person getting quality sleep? If you're living at home, I'm a big fan of doing some sort of device or technology, such as a Fitbit or something that can measure sleep. There are a ton of technological devices out there that you can buy just to see what kind of quality sleep this individual is receiving. And you can, you know, slip them under a pillow, slip them under a mattress. It can be a wearable device. I know the Apple Watch, you know, has sleep sensors. Fitbit has sleep sensors. So any way that you can see, is this person fitful in the middle of the night? Are they, you know, having sleep apnea? Is there something that's keeping them from getting quality sleep, which then would lead to the next day having more intense experiences of Sundown syndrome? But basically what it comes down to is being flexible. You know, understanding that dementia does not happen the same way in every person. Okay, so as a carer, as a care partner, you know, being as flexible as you can, trying to see them as somebody that, of course, you love, you want the best for. You know, we all have sometimes limited abilities to be patient. And so being patient with ourselves and understanding when we have to bring in a professional caregiver, when maybe we have to make that a different type of choice in changing the environment, because honestly, we just can't do it ourselves anymore. I think that's kindness to yourself and knowing your own limits, because you don't want to exhaust yourself in caring for, you know, somebody else. So it's really important to know your own well-being and your own ability to stay well and balancing your own life. So understanding the symptoms are what they are. Be forgiving, be flexible, be empathetic, be patient. And when you feel like you cannot be anymore, bring in the resources. So one of the ways to problem solve is the 5 W's, you know, just kind of figuring out, you know, what's happening around the person when they're having that symptom, you know, who is the person maybe in immediate contact with? Is that person for some reason triggering them? Is the environment triggering them? Is the time of day triggering them? You know, does this happen again always at 3 o'clock? And then was there something that happened at 3 o'clock in your past history that might be triggering them at 3 o'clock? So that's, again, being that message detective and really trying to figure out, you know, why the symptoms are presenting exactly how they're presenting. And then when you have an answer, you have your why, maybe changing the physical environment, or looking into different ways that you can respond to them emotionally that will help them feel better overall.
Wow.
So one of the things that's really important to remember is that when a person is upset, behavior becomes communication. When their words are lost, and losing your words is a big part of the dementia process. It is actually, called, a type of aphasia, receptive and expressive aphasia, or different stages, of the illness itself. Okay, and when a person is unable to communicate what they feel like they need or want, or what they understand in the world that they're living in, the behavior, like, becomes the communication. So we have to realize that this is, again, the symptom of the disorder and not the person themselves. So here's just some tips of what the person might be trying to say through their behavior. Please love me. I'm sad. I'm lonely. I miss my children. I need something. Don't touch me like that. Maybe they're experiencing pain. Maybe they feel misunderstood. Maybe they're afraid or they're unsure. That's really what you're seeing through a lot of these attempts to communicate. So what might be some of their needs? Maybe there's an unmet need, like they're feeling frustrated, or they're having sleep issues, or there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of clutter. There's maybe feeling isolated, or they're feeling ignored. Again, being that message detective, really trying to figure out what some of these unmet needs might be. And here's another list of what some of those needs could be. Again, anything from, a sensory problem. Maybe their glasses are not clean enough, and they feel like they're seeing spots in front of their eyes, because they're literally seeing spots in front of their eyes because their eyeglasses need to be cleaned. Or their hearing aids are not working as well as they could be, and so maybe they feel like they're hearing something. Or maybe they are actually having an auditory or a visual hallucination. Maybe they're having acute pain. So again, figuring it out so that you can better meet their needs. Understanding the why becomes then the what. So once you understand where they're coming from and what they need, that gives you that beginning plan. And then we want to just help the person feel included, help them feel familiar, help them feel that they belong, so that they can feel connected to, emotionally soothed. And then when they're more emotionally soothed, it's decreasing the amount of stress and anxiety that they're having, which will then help the person potentially feel better. So I serve on one of the work groups, or actually a few of the work groups, for the Dementia Action Alliance, which is an advocacy group for people living with dementia. It's an amazing group if you're not familiar with them. And they have a saying that says, "Nothing about us without us." And I love that saying. So it's about people living with dementia, and understanding that we're not here to make choices for them as much as we're here to make choices with them. So understanding what that person might want, what their preferences are, what their historic interests have been, are going to be a really important part of this process of helping them acclimate and thrive while living with dementia.
Can you repeat that? That was the Dementia Action
Alliance. And their website is www.daanow.org.
I'll have Tiffany put that up in the chat.
Yeah, they actually have a project going on right now through Zoom, where they're having entertainment and activities that you can tap into twice a day, 11 a.m. on the East Coast and 1 p.m. also on the East Coast. And it's, I believe, 3 or 4 times a week. I'm actually going to be hosting one this Saturday, where I'm taking people on a tour of my chickens and ducks in my backyard. So,
nice.
So you can tap in and to DAA Now and learn about this new pilot project that they're doing.
Wonderful. Okay.
So as a carer, here are just some tips to help you navigate being a carer a little bit better. It's important to understand, not to rush while you're speaking to the person, because again, taking a longer time for them to process. Try not to lose patience. Try not to raise your voice. Try not to offer long, detailed explanations, because again, that person might not be able to process that. Don't over-orient, today is, Wednesday, 2020, and you're in this house, and and of course, don't try to let them know that they have dementia all the time, because I see that happen a lot. Sometimes with carers think they're doing the right thing is, oh, you forgot that, Mr. Smith, because you have dementia, or you don't remember you had breakfast because you have dementia. No, don't, please. Just let it go. And you don't need to let them know everything or the whys of everything, but just kind of, again, just be in that world with them.
It is so true. You don't have to, it's just letting go, knowing what, picking your battles, even though it shouldn't be a battle, but that's the phrase, to know when you need to take a stand and explain something and when you can let things go. Yeah.
There was a former supervisor I worked with years ago who had the phrase, "Is this your hill to die on?" She would always bring that on. Is this your Custer moment? Is this your hill to die on? I'm like, no, I think I can let that one go. Okay.
That is a great barometer, actually. I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah.
As I navigate my day-to-day.
Exactly. And again, some basic barriers, asking the person to remember all the time, because they can't, so try not to ask them to do something that clinically they just cannot do. Telling the person, of course, that they're wrong, trying to correct them, and wherever they believe that they are, it's okay. Wherever they feel that they are, that's okay. Just let them be in their world. Like I said, telling the person that they have a memory disease all the time, it gets to the point where it's just not kind, So we don't want to find ways to additionally upset people. Finding ways to emotionally connect with them is so positive. Live their truth, try to understand their point of view, understanding that sad emotions are normal, and use empathy to tap into helping them feel better. Now, I want to qualify that. Sad emotions, feeling sad, is normal. Depression is not normal. Okay, so depression is a clinical illness that needs treatment and can be treated even with people living with dementia. So if a person is talking about suicide or hurting them, wanting to hurt themselves, or of course somebody else, they do need medical intervention. Don't change the subject all the time, because then it gets very difficult for them to focus on what you're talking about. Of course, show respect and unconditional positive regard, giving compliments, reassuring them, praising them. That's how you really help them thrive. Other communication tips: listening, learning to be what I call a dementia linguist. I consider myself a dementia linguist. So I have learned to speak the language of a person that is living with dementia. And honestly, that is one of the best things that you can do as a carer, and that comes from over time, just kind of putting yourself more and more into that person's world and seeing where they are, and then learning to speak their language. Because what it really comes down to in the end is that kindness is a language that we all can understand. So, if you need a barometer, understand, be kind. Just be kind, be patient, be loving, be empathetic. And when you're living this emotional connection, it really tends to go, the day, tends to go a whole lot better. So now we open up for questions.
Yeah, we do have a couple, but before we do that, I do want to say to our caregivers who are listening that, wow, we understand what you go through on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes it can be exhausting. So sometimes you need a timeout as well, and you need to take a break. So if you have a friend or another relative, the respite services from ARC Montgomery, and even obviously even Visiting Angels, but I just feel it's very important for our caregivers to have a timeout to regroup themselves and not to feel guilty about that, because it takes so much energy for you to live with this on a day-to-day basis. So, all right, let's take a look at, okay, so I can so relate to some of what you're saying. My husband does some of this prior to 3 p.m. Yeah, and so it sounds like Sundown syndrome it's not strictly 3 to 6, right?
Right. It could go all the way into the nighttime, it could go all the way up to sometimes 3 in the morning. But if it's happening at other times of the day, it could be similar causes outside of that neurotransmitter cause. It could be the stress. It could be just the experience of anxiety within itself. It could be, yes, the person not being able to get enough sleep. So these are, those types of responses could happen, anytime during the day.
Right, right. Now, another question, is it helpful to post a daily schedule?
Say yes in most cases. So I often recommend people to use a whiteboard that then they can, maybe keep on their refrigerator or put in a place where the person can often refer to it. Again, we don't want to be over concrete, but we do want to be predictable to support that feeling of familiarity.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Are there other questions? Those were the 2 big questions. Let's see. When does a carer need to step away or ultimately realize that it's time to look at other options for a loved one? That's a good question.
My go-to is when you feel that emotionally you're not able to give the quality of care that you would like to, because you yourself are exhausted. When you find yourself getting snippy, getting angry, needing to take more time out yourself, starting to feel regretful and resentful, okay, of being in that person's company, the amount of time that you are, those are your main triggers to saying, I can't do this anymore. Because not that we want to bring up the fact that unfortunately elder abuse does occur. It has a tendency to most occur when carers are at their highest level of, I can't take this anymore. Okay. And they react. Okay. So when you feel like your barometer is rising to the point that you just can't take this anymore, you probably should have been looking for help about a few days prior to that. Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. You want to try and put resources in place before you get to that point. And I will share that ARC Montgomery has a wonderful respite program where you can apply for respite hours, and it is not income-based, it's need-based. So I would definitely recommend that you look for that. You also want to go on the Alzheimer's Association's website as well. There are many support groups in the area that are all virtual right now. And also, of course, a company like ours, Visiting Angels, dementia is our most often cited diagnosis with our clients. So we are well equipped to help let you have some time off and not worry about what's going on at home with your loved one. So definitely all different avenues that can be pursued.
Absolutely. And actually, I help facilitate a support group in Montgomery County. So if you live in Montgomery County, you can reach out to me and I can, let you know. It happens twice a month on the first and third Thursdays at 6:30. And of course, now we're Zooming. But I've been co-facilitator of that support group for close to 5 years now. So, but there are others that are happening in Montgomery County as well.
Yeah. If you're in Montgomery County, you are very lucky because I think it is rich in resources for older adults. That's for sure. All right, last call for questions. I don't see, oh, wait a minute. What happens should a loved one change unexpectedly? Do we call 911? Try to use the skills reflected in this event? I think we would need more specifics on the changes. Do you mean get violent, or, I mean, I would think a general rule of thumb, if you feel like you're being threatened or the person, the loved one, is threatening himself, would definitely be a time to call expert Pamela.
Yes. Well, first call 911. So if it is an extreme change, then yeah, if the person is experiencing violence or threats of violence, if anything like that, those sudden drastic changes, 911 honestly should be your first go-to. And also when you call 911, please do let them know to respond with a person who is familiar with dementia. Montgomery County, Maryland, again, has an actual team of people who are schooled in working with people with emotional disorders, autism, and dementia. And so they send out police officers that have been trained to intervene appropriately with a person who is living with dementia or living with autism or has some sort of intellectual disability. So this specific team is the one that goes out to these calls. So if you do need to call 911 because of a person living with dementia, then yes, please do let them know during the call that this is the situation, and they'll send that team out.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Any final questions? And of course, Pamela, any final comments?
No, but I'm so excited to have been able to be here today. So here's my general information. If you'd like to reach out to me, so I do concierge style care organization. As I mentioned, I'm a dementia care consultant. I do education, comprehensive individualized assessments. So if you're interested in having a specific assessment, or I can come into your home and help you navigate exactly where you are right now and where you want to be potentially in the future, then that's some of the things that I do professionally. So please either give me a call or check out my website. And I really am grateful for Visiting Angels for giving me this opportunity to present today.
Absolutely. We are thrilled that you were able to present to us on our coffee chat. So thank you so very much. We will join again in 2 weeks when we will be visited once again by Sheila Griffith from the Alzheimer's Association. And meanwhile, we are just a phone call away. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thank you again, Pamela. We will send out the recording to this coffee chat. Should you like to share it with your loved ones or friends? Have a great, great Wednesday. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.